Hello again, Frank from the Old Town Coleman Center. Welcome to part 3 of my 3-part series on how to rebuild a Coleman 2 or 3 burner stove. In part 1, we took apart this greasy monster. Part 2, we cleaned it. Now we're going to put it together and see if we can get it to work. So go get something to drink. I'll get all this stuff ready and I'll meet you back here after the intro. Welcome back. As I mentioned in the first 2 videos, it doesn't matter what sequence you do this. I'm going to start putting the stove back together and I'm going to start with the tank. And the first thing I'm going to do with the tank is I'm going to put the valve back together, the valve and generator assembly. So what I'm going to do is, here's our valve and I'm just going to put the fuel and air tube down there and tighten it up a little bit. Okay, and it's ready. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is put the generator back together. I'm going to put the gas tip and the gas tip protector back on it. And you see it just fits in there like that. And then the gas tip protector goes over it. And you can see those fine threads. It takes quite a while to get it on there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in a vise and I'm going to tighten this thing down. So you can see I got that end in the vise and I'm tightening it down pretty good. The tip protector is brass and the shaft is steel. So I don't want to strip the threads out of that, but I want this nice and tight. Okay, so we have the gas tip and the gas tip protector back on it. We're going to put our spring in. Doesn't matter what direction you put the spring in on the stove. Now we can put this inside of our valve. Now I'm going to use a square top again and I'm going to put it in the vise. 1/2-inch wrench and just give it a nice turn, nice and tight, and that's all I'm going to do. Here's the problem. If you have a stove and it is burning and the generator goes into the manifold and you have a little bit of a flame here, it's really irritating when people say, how do I get rid of that? Well, you have to tighten this end down without tightening this end down. If I was to do this right now, the entire thing would turn and I would ruin my valve. I don't want to do that. So in this case, what I would do is I would put a second wrench down here and hold it while I tighten this side down. You don't want to just start cranking on this because you're going to screw it right into your valve and you're going to ruin it. So if you have a little leak by your manifold, that's where it's coming from and you just need to tighten this a little bit more. Now we can start putting the valve stem together. So here's the valve stem, there's the packing retainer, here's a brand new valve stem packing, here's a valve stem nut, a valve wheel. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the valve together. The retainer packing has a flat side. You can see that side's flat. This side has got a little bevel on it. And that little bevel goes against that little C-clip right there and stops it. If it wasn't for that, when you unscrewed your valve, it would just keep on unscrewing and unscrewing and unscrewing until it came out and you'd have a big problem. So make sure that this retainer, the beveled portion, is going forward so it locks onto that C-clip. Next goes on the valve stem packing. And then comes the valve stem nut. Remember there was a packing in here, we broke it out, and there it is. That's all there is. Now we're going to put the cleaner rod back in here, so I'm just going to thread it in there by hand. This is real easy to break. I don't want to bend this, but I need to put it inside of the tube, so I'm just very carefully going to set it down in there. There we go. Okay. Just hand tight. Back to the vise. Okay, next we will set tension on the valve stem packing, and the way we do that is we're going to put the valve wheel on it and we are just going to turn it back and forth and I'm going to tighten the valve stem nut until there is enough resistance on this that I can feel it grabbing. Okay, now I have it's a little bit harder to turn it, and that means that packing has been compressed around the valve stem and it will not leak now. So it's ready to go. Okay, so here's our valve and generator, and if you've ever priced this assembly, you'll know why it's really a good thing to rebuild it, because these things are really expensive. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is reinsert it into our tank. So I'm just sticking the fuel and air tube down there, and I'm going to start turning this, get it threaded in there. And you want to make sure that you do not have your valve wheel on it now, because if you do, as you turn it, it's going to scrape on the top. So you want to make sure it's off. But just keep turning it until it starts getting a little bit tight, and that's going to tell you about where it's going to end. So you'll see that I have to take it all the way back around. Until it looks like that. Now, I can eyeball this. This will be my course alignment. I just need to make sure that my generator is perpendicular to the tank, because when I put it in, this has to be centered in the manifold, and you want both of your tabs locked into the case. So when we put the case together, we'll fit this in there, and we may have to do a little back and forth on this to get it to fit right. Next thing we'll do is we'll take our fuel filler cap insert, and here's the new gasket for it. And I'm just going to set it on there and work it down with my thumb. Nice and flat, no rolls. Stick it on there like that just to make sure it's nice and flat. Put that on loosely. Then we're going to put our insert screw back in it and tighten it down. Now I can tighten that down, and okay, that's done. All right, next comes the check valve. Where's check valve? Oh yeah. Boy, it's been soaking for a long time down here. The check valve has lots of fuel deposits on it, oil deposits on it, and it really gets nasty. If you soak it in something like this for a number of days, the chances are very, very high that it is going to come out and not leak. You'll probably be able to clean your check valve, but you might have to replace it. Got it out of there. I'm just going to shoot it with some carburetor cleaner and then blow it out. You can see how clean it comes out of there. It looks like a brand new check valve. Just drop it down in there and make sure she's setting up. When you're reinstalling your check valve, you don't want to crank on it, but you do need to make sure it's tight, because old ones don't have that O-ring in them, and it's possible they'll leak if you don't put that in tight enough. Okay, put our air stem back in. We can put our valve wheel back on now too. The pump. She's been soaking for a while, and I bet that leather pump cup has absorbed all the oil. It's nice and flexible. Okay, one thing we have to be really, really careful about is we just put a nice clean check valve down in there, and if we don't blow all the oil out of this shaft, all that oil is going to drain down into your check valve, and oil inside of a check ball it's just not going to work. So I'm going to blow this out too. There she is. She's ready to go. See, the leather's nice and soft. All right, so now I'm going to put the pump clip on it. And sometimes you can do this by hand, sometimes they get a pair of pliers to get both sides in. But anyway, you just put the ends in there, and that will hold our pump in. And Everything feels normal. A little air pressure, okay. Okay, so to do a simple test on the tank, I can test the check valve, make sure it's working now, but I can also make sure that the tank is going to deliver sufficient fuel to the case and the burner to burn properly. So the way we can do that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it about 35 pumps and pressurize the tank. Okay, 35 pumps, and there it sits. The first test is the check valve. If I put my finger over that hole right now, and hopefully the pump's just going to sit there. If the check valve is leaking, all of that air I just forced in is going to start coming back out, and you'd be able to tell when I put my finger over the hole. Hopefully it's not going to move, because, come on. Oh, there it goes a little bit. That's just a little bit too fast. I don't like it. I'm sorry, so I'm going to stop right now, and I'm going to change the check valve. There we go. Okay. It's brand new. It better not leak. Okay, so now we got our check valve side done. The other thing we can test on our tank before we insert it into our burner is to make sure we have sufficient fuel coming out the end of the generator. And I want to be able to see it, so I'm just going to stick this rag up there. And I'm looking for the shooting mist that's coming out. And it needs to be strong enough. It has quite a ways to go. It has to go all the way through the U-tube and then back over to the burner that's under here. So it has a ways to go. We just have to make sure there's enough pressure on it. So I'm just going to open it up and watch what's coming out. And it's a pretty good stream. Okay, so that's what we want. So our tank is ready to go. I am going to set it aside and get the case over here. We're going to start putting the burner back together. Okay, we got our case out, and it is time to put our burner back together, and then I will put it in the case. These are all the parts that go with the burner. I'm going to put them in. First thing I'm going to do is get my burner and put my burner boxes back in. Remember part one, we had difficulty getting this apart, and it's okay if that happens, because these are not tight, airtight connections or anything. What you do is you just keep turning it until it gets to a place where it stops, and then you just back it to where it's supposed to be. Okay. Now what I want to do is I need to put the support arm on this. So this is the way it's shaped, and it's just going to go on there like this, and it'll sit down there and it'll hold the back end of the manifold up. So I'm just going to put a screw through it. One of our little flat washers. And just sit there. Okay, so it's attached now, and I'm going to leave it loose. And the reason I'm going to leave it loose is I'm going to leave everything in the manifold loose, because we still have to bring the tank back and line everything up. So I'm just setting everything in there. Now I'm going to turn the case up on its side, and I'm going to put the 3 paddle nuts at the bottom of our burner boxes, and I'm going to put the screw in for the burner support. Okay, so the manifold is down in here, and it's still loose, because what I have to do is I have to be able to move it just a little bit once I put the generator in to make sure everything's all lined up. Once I do that, then I can tighten it all back down, then we can put our burner bowls on it. So let me go get the tank, we'll put it in, and we'll see how square we got it. Okay, so again, perpendicular, and hopefully this generator will slide right in there, and both flaps will land perfectly in the slots provided for them. So let's see how it works. And our coarse tune, yeah, we're a little off. If you can see, you see this tab down here is nice and tight, perfect, but this one's off. It's not sitting in there square. So this has to be rotated just a little bit this way, which means I have to rotate the valve clockwise, just a little bit. So I'm taking it out. I'm just going to grab it. And that was probably too much, but we're going to put it back in and see how it locks down now. Yeah, you can see that I, too far, went the wrong way. Okay. Just like that. Everything's sitting in there nice and tight. It's resting on the tabs. That's exactly how it's supposed to fit. So now what I can do is I will tighten the 3 paddle nuts, tighten down this bracket here, and then I can put my burner bowls back on. Okay, next comes the burner bowls. If you have a 425 or a 413, you're only obviously going to have 2. I have a 426B and it's got 3. Now, you'll notice one of them's different. This one, the inside is larger, and that is our master burner bowl. So we're going to set that in the center, and these 2 will go on the sides. Next comes the burner rings. And look at this mess that we have here. And I'm going to separate them. We have the master burners larger than the 2 auxiliary burners, so I'm just going to separate them by size for now. Burner rings, you can see some of them are corrugated and some of them are flat. This is all you have to remember. Flat on the top, flat on the bottom, and then they alternate. So starting from the top, we're going to go a flat and a corrugated. A flat and a corrugated. A flat and a corrugated. And a flat. So there's our master burner. It's got a flat on top, it's got a flat on the bottom, and it alternates. And you can see the little holes in there. That's where our nice little blue flames are going to come out from. So I'm just going to set this down in here. Just going to set it nice and easy on there because we have to put our screw down through the middle and we don't want our rings to come apart. So we're going to set this down there like that. Put the center screw in it and just get it started. Our screwdriver. Tighten her down. And the master burner's ready. Our 2 auxiliary burners, we have to split these in half. Okay, flat's corrugated. Flat on the bottom, corrugated, flat, corrugated, flat, corrugated, and flat. Flat on top, flat on the bottom, and they alternate. Same thing on these. Set them in. Okay, everything lining up nicely here. And we don't want to look down and see any of our burner rings. Okay, there it is. We are back together. Next thing we'll do is put the grills back in it, and then we'll put our lid back in it. And we're getting about done. Which is good because I'm getting hungry and I want to cook a burger. Okay, next comes the grates. On this particular stove, the grates were held on by 4 clips. So I'm just going to set them here for now. And these are those clips. You can see how they're shaped. And they go on like that. You can see in the back of the stove here, there's just a little itty bitty slot. And you slide the back of it in it. Like that. And you have to kind of manipulate it to get it to sit down in there right. You don't want to force these. Just keep playing with them until they fit in there the way you want them to. Okay, now we're going to put the screws through. Okay, same thing for the lid. This gets a little bulky. It can be a little hard to do, but just take your time and a little patience and you'll be done. All right, well, that was fun, but we're done. Okay, so now it looks like all we have to do is put our legs back in and put the tank in, and we are ready to fire it up. Legs are real easy, they just snap in. Okay, we have a handle we have to put back on, tank, and that thing. All right, let's see. Okay, here's our new handle. And what you have to do, you can see this is usually square, but I had to open it up a little bit to get it off the old stove, so now I have to put it back in there. And when I do, I'll have to put it back in here and bend it square. So, just gonna pull it a little bit, get it in there. Squeeze them together and push it through. And now that I'm in there, if you can look down and see the inside of this handle, you can see that it's kind of flared out. I'm just going to squeeze it, bring it back together a little bit, and now it goes in and out. So there's our handle. Pow. I'm not sure how it goes on. You know what, I'll just put it here like this for now, and we can deal with that in a little bit. I'm going to tell you a secret about Coleman stoves. And this is a secret that not a lot of people know. Starting in 1923, when they would actually make one of these things, they would print off what's called a manual, and they would slip that inside of the box. Every one of these stoves came with a manual. To learn how to operate a stove, all you have to do is RTFM. That's it. What does RTFM stand for? I can't tell you, but you can stop this video and look it up. Do a Google search and you'll find out what RTFM means. If you RTFM, that manual is going to tell you to close your auxiliary burners. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to close this burner, and I'm going to close this burner. The manual is also going to tell you to give it about 35 pumps, approximately. I've done that. So the next thing the manual is going to tell you to do is turn your lighting lever up. It's really hard to read right here, but, well, actually I have a coffee cup here, and they use the same logo as I have on this coffee cup. It says, lever must be turned up to light. After 1 minute, turn down to burn. Up to light, down to burn. So we're in the up position. The next thing the manual is going to tell you to do is to hold a lit match over the master burner. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to take a match and I'm going to light it. Okay? And I'm going to hold it over the master burner. And the next thing the manual tells you to do is grab your valve wheel and open all the way open. All the way open. All the way open. You can see what's happening now. All of that fuel that we watch come out is going through that U-tube back underneath and up into that burner. It is pulling air from the tank right now. Not a lot of fuel, but a lot of air that has vapor in it, and that's what's burning. That's the little blue flames you see. As the generator gets hot, the generator will start vaporizing the fuel. the flame will settle down a little bit. I'll turn the lever down, then I can put some more air into it and it will be burning normally. You'll notice we still have some blue flames, or some yellow flames, and the blue's starting to come here. This takes a few minutes for this to build up enough heat to get it to vaporize properly. Don't be concerned yet. Okay. She's settled down a little bit. Let's see if we can get our auxiliary burners working. That one looks pretty good. Turn them all the way up. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick break here. I'm going to prepare some hamburgers because I'm really hungry. And I'm going to do a little bit of research on this to see if I can figure out what it's for so I can let you know here in a little bit. Okay, we're out at the campsite, or close to it. Trying to reflect a little bit on what we've done here. I put a number of hours into this stove, and you're going to put a number of hours into yours. And we are about to receive the fruits of our labor. It's not the prettiest stove in the world, but you know what? It's 65 and 70 years old, and it's clean. It's not sticky. It burns great. And if you compare this against a 3-burner propane Coleman stove you're going to buy today, I'm not sure the price of one of those things, but I can tell you it will have completely returned to the earth and deteriorated away before this one stops working, which will probably be never. Again, I think I paid $10 for the stove. The valve stem packing and the filler cap gasket total maybe $5. So if I've got $25 into this stove, I'd be surprised. And we already found out that a new 2-burner, the little 2-burner, is $180. So a great bargain, a lot to be proud of. All right, so let's talk about that device on the stove lid that we're not sure what it is. A lot of people think it's to hold one of these. There is no reference that I have ever found that would be called a towel rack. It makes a convenient towel rack, but that's not what it's for. So if you actually take the time to RTFM, you'll find out what it's for. And the manual tells you that you can remove your wind flaps, fold this in, and you can rest it back, and it gives you a work surface. And it's not a towel rack. It is referred to in the user manuals as a lid leg, or as a rod support, or a shelf support. Okay, now that we have a nice clean stove and we have a nice work surface, let's fire it up and cook us some burgers for dinner. Okay, got the burgers on. I didn't explain this stove. The reason this one doesn't have a towel rack, if you will, is because this does not fold back all the way. It was not intended to fold back. So if it doesn't fold back, then it can't be a work surface. And if it's not going to be a work surface, then why would you need a lid support or a lid leg? So if you have a stove and you don't have a manual for it, you can go to www.oldtowncoleman.com, go to the reference section, and you'll be able to find an owner's manual for your stove. If you go there and it's not listed, please email me and I'll try to find you one. I'm trying to build a substantial library online of all the user's manuals from all the way back to the #1 stove. So if you have one and can scan it and share it with everybody, we'd sure appreciate it. Okay, let's talk about something that's really important. These burgers. This is how you do this. You go down to your frozen meat section and you get the best 1/3 pound burger you can buy. Best sirloin burgers you can find. I put onion powder, garlic powder, pepper, Worcestershire sauce, a little bit of olive oil, and then I put Montreal steak seasoning on it. And they are absolutely delicious. Okay. Once again, the website is www.oldtowncoleman.com. You can find us on Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And ladies and gentlemen, it is about dinner time. It's been a long day of filming, and this is exactly why at the end of every video I say keep them burning. This is why we keep them burning.